FIFA just watched a World Cup that fans call messy, bloated, and tiring, and their big fix? Make it even bigger. Gianni Infantino wants 64 teams. 64! That's almost a third of every country on Earth in one tournament. He's calling it a gift for the little guy, a dream for everyone. But follow the money, follow the votes. A totally different story shows up. Let's break down what this is really about, because it's not about football. Here's exactly what Infantino said. Talking to Swiss broadcaster Blue Sport, he confirmed FIFA is looking at growing the World Cup to 64 teams, maybe by 2030. His pitch sounded sweet and simple. Build it for the whole world, not just Europe and South America. Let every nation dream. He called this year's 48-team tournament a massive win, bragging that 9 of 10 African teams made the knockouts. On paper, who could say no to more countries dreaming big? That's exactly the trick. It sounds nice. It's built to. Now look at what expansion really does to the tournament. Start with the 48-team format we're watching today. It's already stretched way too thin. 12 groups of 4, and to fill 32 knockout spots, the top 2 and the 8 best third-place teams all move on. Let that sink in. You could lose, draw, play badly, finish third, and still advance. 3 full rounds of games just to knock out barely a third of the teams. That kills the drama. That's why we keep seeing dead games, blowouts, and matches that mean nothing, because finishing third is basically a free pass anyway. Even Infantino's favorite stat gives away the problem. He brags 9 of 10 African teams reach the knockouts. But think about that for a second. When almost everybody moves on, moving on means nothing. That's not proof the teams got stronger, that's proof the bar got lower. Now double it. 64 teams means 128 matches, up from 104 this year. Double the old 64-match format. Games would kick off across every time zone, midnight, 9 a.m., whenever. More teams, more games, more filler. And the problems stack up fast. You'd need over 20 stadiums, meaning one country could never host alone again. Co-hosting becomes the only option. You can already see the strain in 2030, split across 6 countries and 2 continents, starting in South America, then jumping the ocean to Spain, Portugal, and Morocco. A tournament built for one host is turning into a scheduling nightmare, and the football gets buried under the logistics. Let's be fair for a second, because this isn't just something to mock. There's a real argument on the other side. The underdog stories this World Cup, pure magic. Tiny Cape Verde nearly took down Argentina. Norway rode Erling Haaland into a shock quarterfinal. Africa had an incredible run overall. And Infantino has a point. When small nations get a real shot, kids start dreaming and countries start investing in football. Inclusion isn't automatically a scam. Past expansions in 1982 and 1998 worked out fine. The World Cup survived. If this were purely about letting more countries play, fair enough. Reasonable people could disagree. But that's not the whole story, and quality is where this idea falls apart. For every amazing Cape Verde moment, this format also gave us piles of boring, meaningless games, and 64 teams would make that so much worse. The whole point of the World Cup is being the hardest ticket in sports to earn. That scarcity is the prestige. It's what makes qualifying actually mean something. Water it down until a third of all 211 FIFA nations get in, and just showing up stops being special. It becomes a numbers game. This isn't just angry fans talking. Veteran coach Carlos Queiroz warned about protecting what qualifying actually means. UEFA's president Alexander Ceferin flat out called 64 teams a bad idea. CONCACAF's president says it's the wrong move too. The people actually running world football are against this. The World Cup should be the best versus the best, not half the planet showing up for participation trophies. Here's a telling part. Who's actually pushing 64 teams? It didn't come from fans or players. It came from CONMEBOL, South America's football body, who formally proposed it for 2030. Meanwhile, UEFA, CONCACAF, and Asia's Confederation are all against it. So this doesn't look like football consensus. It looks like political alliance building, with Infantino leaning toward whichever side gives him what he wants. When one region proposes doubling the tournament and everyone else says no, and the president suddenly gets interested, You have to ask who this is really serving. If football people mostly hate it and quality suffers, why is Infantino pushing so hard? Here's where the fairy tale falls apart and two real answers show up: money and power. Start with the money. It's almost embarrassingly obvious once you look. More teams equals more matches equals more cash. More broadcast deals, more tickets, more sponsors, more hospitality packages sold. FIFA expects roughly $16 to $17 billion from this one 39-day tournament. Infantino's reaction to that number? Quite satisfactory. Maybe the understatement of the decade. Forbes says FIFA expects around $9 billion from 2026 alone. That's more than they made across the entire previous 4 years, including the Qatar World Cup. Broadcasting alone brings in almost $4 billion. So when Infantino says every nation deserves to dream, here's the real translation. Every nation is a new TV market, a new pile of sponsors, a new wave of ticket buyers. Expansion isn't charity, it's inventory. And this organization has spent the whole tournament finding new things to charge for. Infantino brags stadiums are running at 99.7% capacity. He even boasted that overpriced tickets are now reselling for 4 or 5 times their original cost. Like fans getting ripped off twice is something to celebrate. He brushed off hydration break complaints, even admitting they spark real debate. Every complaint gets the same answer. The money's rolling in, so who cares? When success is only measured in cash, of course the fix is always make it bigger. Now, the power, because this ties everything together, and it might be the real engine here. FIFA's president isn't picked by fans or by talent. He's elected by 211 member federations. And here's the key part. A tiny nation gets the exact same vote as Germany or Brazil. One country, one vote. So a plan that suddenly gives small nations a real shot at the World Cup, it also happens to buy Infantino the loyalty of exactly the voters he needs. And with a FIFA election coming in early 2027, the timing isn't subtle at all. Critics say "let every nation dream" isn't really about football, it's a campaign slogan. Give 100 small countries a bigger seat at the table, and you've just bought 100 votes wrapped up as generosity. Money funds the machine. Votes keep control of it. That's the whole deal. And if you want one perfect symbol of what FIFA has become, forget the team count for a second. This one's unbelievable. FIFA is literally selling
And the
the
quality
grass.
argument is
They're
against
cutting
it.
up the pitch
Why
from
is
the July
Infantino
19th
so
final at
keen?
MetLife Stadium and selling pieces for $450 each. Every chunk sealed in a fancy acrylic block with a USB stick attached, sold as your piece of football history. They couldn't even confirm if the size listed is inches, centimeters, or millimeters, and they never answered when asked. That's the level of care we're talking about. Here's the punchline. Players and coaches have spent this whole tournament complaining the MetLife pitch is bad since it's normally fake turf for NFL games. So FIFA is selling you $450 souvenir squares of a field the players themselves think isn't good enough. Add in final tickets going for $32,970 and hydration breaks that were basically just extra ad time, and the whole picture becomes crystal clear. This isn't a sports organization that happens to make money, it's a money machine that happens to host football, and the two have stopped pretending to be the same thing. So yes, Infantino calls this World Cup a triumph, and for his bank account and his ballot box, it absolutely is. But success for FIFA and quality for football are now heading in opposite directions, and 64 teams is where they fully break apart. Expanding the tournament doesn't grow the dream, it cheapens it. Because a dream everyone gets handed for free isn't a dream anymore, it's a giveaway. The World Cup used to be the hardest thing to reach in all of sports. That difficulty was the whole point. The only real winners when it gets bigger, the ones counting the broadcast checks, and the ones counting the votes. Right now in Zurich, that's the same people. Would a 64-team World Cup excite you, or is FIFA squeezing this thing until the magic disappears? Drop your verdict below, and stick around, because the semifinals are here, and there's a lot more of this circus still coming.
the actual footballers think isn't good enough. Stack that on top of final tickets going for as much as $32,970, and the hydration breaks that everyone clocked were really just extra advertising windows, and the picture snaps into focus. This is not a sporting organization that happens to make money. It's a money machine that happens to host a football tournament, and the two have stopped even pretending to be the same thing. So yes, Infantino calls this World Cup a triumph, and for his balance sheet and his ballot box, it absolutely is. But success for FIFA and quality for football have quietly drifted into opposite directions, and 64 teams is the moment they fully split. Expanding the tournament doesn't grow the dream. It cheapens it, because a dream that everyone gets handed isn't a dream anymore. It's a giveaway. The World Cup was the hardest thing in sport to reach, and that difficulty was the entire point. The only people who reliably win when it gets bigger are the ones counting the broadcast checks and the ones counting the votes. And right now in Zurich, those happen to be the same people. Would a 64-team World Cup excite you? Or is FIFA squeezing this thing until the magic runs out? Drop your verdict below and hang around, because the semifinals are here and there's plenty more of this circus still to come.